The last quarter of 2023 began with one of the most front-loaded months from an in-ring perspective, including a couple of the finest matches yet since starting this monthly series. If this is your first time coming across this channel, this is a series documenting my favorite matches and moments throughout the course of a calendar year. Let's get right to it with some terms and conditions as to how I go about doing this. First, it's obvious I will not have seen every single match to take place. Time and money are finite things, and I have some major blind spots compared to other channels, blogs, or podcasts. The great part is, if there's something I haven't seen that you have, I'd love to hear your recommendations in the comments and continue the discussion. Second, favorite and best are different things, and my favorite matches may differ from, say, something critically acclaimed by Wrestling Observer newsletter. This isn't a top 10s video or a hidden gems type thing either. It's simply my selection of matches based off of personal enjoyment rather than star ratings, cage match ratings, business metrics, etc. And last but not least, a spoiler warning for match finishes. By the numbers, I've watched 229 matches spanning 17 promotions. Here are a few of my favorites from October of 2023. This is the obvious match to talk about from the last month, but given a chance to talk about Bryan Danielson and Zack Sabre Jr. for this series, I'd be stupid to overlook it. The peaks of Wrestle Dream represent AEW at its best as a variety promotion. Like the hard-hitting athleticism of Swerve and Hangman, the roller coaster that was Christian and Darby, or something like this that brings technical excellence to a mainstream pay-per-view setting, fittingly so for an Antonio Inoki tribute. Any praise given towards this match shouldn't come as a surprise given who's in it, though there were a few things that stood out to me, first being the pacing of this thing. They fit a lot into its 23-minute runtime, though it never feels excessive or bogged down. It's champagne wrestling for the first half of the match, featuring some brilliant technical exchanges as you'd expect, until Zack becomes a little more cynical when he's in control. Danielson acts as the emotional core to this match, garnering sympathy while his arm is being worked over, and once again fires up as only he can. Zack loses sight of the mission, and as he's goaded into slugging it out with the American Dragon, loses the upper hand as well. ZSJ can go hold for hold with Bryan Danielson, but going blow for blow is a different story. Danielson wins after a second Busaiku knee. As pointed out in the commentary, winning with a strike doesn't exactly prove who the better technical wrestler was. I think this outcome gives Zack something in defeat, and possibly leaves room for a rematch. While I don't know if that's necessary, I won't complain if they do end up running it back. Something else that stood out to me in this match is the way these two were able to convey pain simply through their technique. There's a concept that a viewer might not know what it feels like to be in the ring or to take a specific move, but you more than likely know how awful it feels to move a body part in a way you're not supposed to. This idea rang true for me in this match, with instances of Danielson having his hand and fingers pulled at gross angles, or the way Zack Sabre Jr. sold that dragon screw leg whip. They didn't need over-the-top violence to get across a sense of brutality here. It's a special match that lived up to its billing, and if you haven't seen it by now, you're doing yourself a disservice. With what we know now, this is more than likely the last Danielson match to be discussed in the 2023 monthly series. Coincidentally, we lose a chunk of this final run, but everything we got in October between this match, Collision, and Dynamite is worth your time. Get well soon, Dragon. I haven't had much to say about Ring of Honor in a while. It's been pretty barren on Honor Club since the last pay-per-view, especially since most of their champions haven't made appearances on the weekly show itself. Naturally, the one constant has been the fallen goddess Athena, who's been developing a slow-burning story with Billy Starks in between her world title defenses. The October 5th edition of the show gave us yet another solid entry against the resurgent, legit Leyla Hirsch. Hirsch enters this match after quietly racking up wins on Honor Club and looking for a breakout performance since her momentum last year was halted due to injury. There are few better than Athena right now who could deliver on that, and to little surprise, they make good here in the 12 minutes they were given. Most of it reiterates the strengths of these Athena matches, highlighting both her physicality and creativity, though Hirsch brings something different to the table with her background in amateur wrestling. It's still very much an Athena match though. The bombs are frequent and loud, and everything is rough around the edges in a way that complements both wrestlers. We get more nasty offense outside the ring, as at one point Athena straight up dumps Hirsch face first off the stairs to the floor. This never feels entirely one-sided though. Hirsch's background gives her the awareness to pull off a lot of clever counters, primarily reversing Athena's crossface into a Juji Kitami to nearly pull off the victory. Athena's run of form is just too much to overcome though. Her strength and aggression prevail with some outright sickening forearms and a huge Liger bomb to escape a guillotine. As we've seen throughout this title reign, Athena is constantly crafting new ways to win within her squash matches to prepare for these situations. Here she utilizes her recently christened Despicable Knee to put away Hirsch, continuing one of the best title reigns in North America. An impressive showing from Hirsch, and perhaps a glimpse at someone who will step into a more prominent role in Ring of Honor heading forward. We go from one hard-hitting title match to another, though if the last match was a sledgehammer, this one is a battering ram. You can swing a hammer in different ways to get your desired result, or take the straightforward approach with a battering ram. The Wonder of Stardom Championship from Nagoya Golden Fight took the things I enjoyed about this pairing's tournament match and simply expanded on them. After Momo Watanabe pinned the champion clean in July, she has a chance to finally get back a belt that she is synonymous with. I think Momo has been quietly great this fall, and this was no exception. Great in her role as a bully to galvanize MIRAI to dig deep in this match. Momo brings it right out of the gate. She utilizes everything at her disposal, be it the environment, submissions, or many gross targeted kicks to wear down the champion's arm. It's an incredibly mean heat segment complemented by MIRAI's selling and ability to take a beating before firing back. MIRAI is able to reverse an Irish whip into the ringside seats, buying herself some time to regroup. From here, it turns into a much more competitive exchange of high-impact offense. Luckily, these two are pretty good at that. There's some creative counters incorporated to all the bombs as well. My favorite being a sequence where MIRAI escapes out of a pump handle position, rolling through with wrist control into a ripcord lariat, one of the many dished out on her way to victory. An intense, straightforward match from a pairing I like a whole lot. It's no secret Momo doesn't get the same opportunities she used to before Bushiroad bought the company, which is a shame, given that she could still be just as good in these spots. As for MIRAI, I think a lot of Stardom fans need to calm down with the outrage toward her push. She isn't the first to be booked like this, and she won't be the last. I think her in-ring ability speaks for itself, and I tend to think that if she were in God's eye, maybe she'd be viewed more favorably by her naysayers. There are many who will discuss this match in a more eloquent and intelligent way than I could. At the risk of imposter syndrome, I'd be remiss to not talk about it. I think it's one of the more significant matches to take place this year, not just for the action itself, but for the perception around it. If you've never heard of these guys, it's important to get the gist of how the show came to be. Abe and Nomura are tag partners and astronauts, one of the very best teams in the world. Abe specifically is influenced and trained by practitioners of the Bachi Bachi style that was prominent in the Fighting Investigation Team Battle Arts promotion from years past. Battle Arts gets grouped in with shoot style, though to my understanding it was much more than that. It incorporated these elements while still existing within established pro wrestling principles. The promotion has closed its doors for over a decade, so Abe took it upon himself to put together a show in junction and headlined with Nomura. Kakuto KTDAN, We Are the Fighting Detectives. I hope I pronounced that right. The main event featured a showdown between the two close friends and tag partners, not only passionately showcasing a style that they love, but endorsing it going forward. The match itself is the quintessential ass kicker of 2023, rooted in a very genuine place. Abe and Nomura are both stellar technicians and hit harder than most. Even when wrestling each other, that reputation is upheld. I think they absolutely nailed what they were going for here. They push each other to their physical limit while exploring the fullest extent of their fighting styles. The work itself is as advertised. Grounded, thoughtful grappling, wonderful escapes from submissions, and the most insane striking I've seen in a wrestling ring in 2023. In the most literal sense, no punches are pulled, and at times they are just teeing off on each other's foreheads. They wear down their own bodies with how hard their punches, kicks, and headbutts are thrown. My words will not do it justice, you simply need to see it. There are comedic moments woven into the match, and while I can see that throwing someone off, I'd argue it adds a much more human element to things, and it's genuine coming from Abe, especially with his background. It's not uncommon for two friends to break the tension in a competitive setting, and that's what I got from it. Through all of the insanity, it ends as it begins on the mat, as a bloodied Abe wins via submission. A match that lives up to every word of praise, and one that I keep finding reasons to revisit as articles and podcasts point out details I may have missed on my first couple of watches. I mentioned perception earlier, and I think the response to this match is one of the ideal instances of how word of mouth should work in the wrestling community. The experience of seeing many people drop whatever they were doing to see this match was unlike anything I've seen since starting this series. There's very few stones left unturned with modern wrestling, so for this one to have such an enthusiastic response, ranging from opinions of those that I personally subscribe to, all the way down to someone who may have not even seen Japanese wrestling, is a wonderful thing, especially for a match that didn't take place in any sort of major company. Taking all of that into consideration, this match can act as a gateway for anyone unfamiliar with these wrestlers or this style as a whole. I'll even use myself as an example. I was an Astronauts fan going into this, but admittedly never went out of my way to see any of the Battle Arts footage from the past. It's something I was aware of through list projects or through the great work of the Four Pillars of Hell and Andos, both right here on YouTube, and after seeing this match, I'm obviously more inclined to do so, and I'm sure I'm not the only one. The official release of this entire show can be found on Wrestle Universe, and at just under 2 hours, including an intermission, it's an absolute breeze of a watch that I can't recommend enough. Abe and Nomura put on a truly exceptional wrestling match, all in the name of sharing something they're passionate about. That concept is something we can all relate to, and that's kind of the point of this channel in the first place. Except astronauts can get their point across in a much cooler way than I could. Last month I talked about Hiromu Takahashi having a standout match in this junior heavyweight ambassador run, and here it reached its peak in a visit to the second part of Michinoku Pro's 30th anniversary show. This match serves as the greatest test for Fujita Jr. Hayato, a different Hayato from last month, in his return run to wrestling, facing the biggest name in modern junior heavyweights. While I think this is Hiromu's best guest appearance this year, the match is highlighted by Hayato's individual performance. A lot of Hiromu's big match tropes are present here, and if that isn't your thing, I get it, though I think a lot of them play into the story of the match, proving that Hayato can stand amongst the premier juniors in this chapter of his career. The striking exchanges in the first half of the match make a lot more sense to me. Fighting spirit is a phrase that gets thrown around a lot nowadays. Hayato's performance is rooted in its basic principles, getting up until you simply can't anymore. It does go long because of this, but I was easily wrapped up in the story and wanted to see Hayato fight back. His offense still rocks, he can strike with the very best of them, and his shoot style influence gives him an advantage on the ground. Hiromu tries to equal him on the mat, but quickly returns to his strengths. It's an interesting styles clash, and the two get back to striking and big moves for the finishing stretch. The highlights aren't the moves here though, it's all in Hayato's demeanor. His body language and his facial reactions carry everything. He refuses to stay down, even at times clutching at his heavily taped back where he had surgery during his cancer treatment. After an extended exchange of big moves and near falls, Hiromu wins with a time bomb too. Despite the result, Hayato proved that after all he's endured in the ring and in life, he belongs here. A match that is flawed in certain areas, but I was easily wrapped up in Hayato's story, and it's one of my favorite individual performances I've covered in the series thus far. This type of drama won't click with every wrestling fan, but it resonated with me. This month was riddled with plenty of big, epic singles bouts, but sometimes you just need a fun multi-man match to balance things out. Katsuhiko Nakajima's last Noah match in Korakuen Hall was just that, delivering a feel-good main event in a company that desperately needed one to say the least. Nakajima has history with almost everyone in the match. He teams with two men he's had successful tag runs with in the past in the AXIZ and the Aggression respectfully. The match is anchored by the pairings of Shiozaki and Soya, as well as Nakajima and Mochizuki, mixing in Kitamiya and Inaba to keep things moving. The through line here is a lot of stubborn meathead violence. That tone is set early as Mochizuki and Nakajima kick each other in the head and the spine for old time's sake. Soya and Shiozaki smack the hell out of each other for a few minutes to give each team a chance to recover before Kitamiya tags in for a big man exchange. There's some miscommunication between the Aggression leading to some infighting. Normally I wouldn't like something like this, but given that it's the last time they'll share a ring for the foreseeable future, I didn't mind it. AXIZ gets their turn to lay into Mochizuki before Nakajima hits Inaba with a vertical spike for the win. It's not the most remarkable match this month, but it is a whole lot of fun and is sentimental for fans of everyone involved. All the different interactions are a blast and nothing feels like it overstates its welcome. I preferred this to Nakajima's actual farewell match from the 28th. I think this one is much more balanced, and Masaaki Mochizuki makes everything better. I don't think we've seen the end of AXIZ either. At least at the time of recording, Nakajima is already teasing an appearance in All Japan. I'm sure I'll have something to say about that if it ends up happening anytime soon. I could have easily opted to talk about one of Gunther's title defenses this month, but for variety's sake, I went with another tag that's not only a lot of fun, but functions as one of the better main roster call-ups. The Creeds debut on Raw on short notice, show up, and have a match. No bells or whistles, that's it. They answered an open challenge by the ever-reliable Alpha Academy, a team with a similar dynamic and a shared amateur wrestling background. The match itself is an ideal showcase for the brothers. You get chain wrestling between Gable and Julius, a big man exchange between Otis and Brutus, followed by more spot-heavy sections to display the Creed's freakish strength and athleticism. It obviously makes sense to put these teams together because of their stylistic similarities, but also worth noting that Alpha Academy are great at these explosive party matches, seen in the last couple of WrestleManias and on Raw last year. I think that mold is similar for the Creeds, though clearly there's big plans for them right away. After a Julius hot tag, a frenetic sequence leads to a Brutus ball to Otis for the victory, which is just a ridiculous visual. A short and sweet slam dunk needed to quickly establish a team with loads of potential. I hope to see more of these two teams interacting as they get acclimated with life on the main roster. I don't think WWE had the strongest month, especially on the SmackDown side of things, but the addition of the Creeds on Raw at least gives another name to look for on the card. And before I go, here are some honorable mentions that weren't brought up in previous entries. Fujita Jr. Hayato and Masaaki Mochizuki vs Dragon Kid and Masato Tanaka from Dragon Gate October 5th. Some further material from two wrestlers discussed in the previous entries taking place on Mochizuki's Buyuden production. They beat the hell out of Dragon Kid, who puts in a great performance. Wish we got a little bit more of Tanaka though. Mio Momono and Takumi Iroha vs Riko Kawahata and Yu from Noah, October 9th. A pleasant surprise on Noah's new weekly show, Monday Magic. I thought this was a great showcase tag, and I was especially impressed by Iroha here. Having some Joshi matches here and there is a nice way to freshen things up for Noah, and I like to see more of that. Kairi's farewell match from Stardom. It's too long, but I'm a Stars guy, so this was for me in a lot of ways. I really appreciate Saida and Koguma getting a lot in this match, as Kairi leaves one sister for another. Grizzled Young Veterans vs the Workhorsemen from DPW, October 15th. GYV begin their post-WWE careers with a barn burner, and I'm very excited to see where they show up next. Kento Miyahara vs Yuma Aoyagi from All Japan, October 21st. Not a lot outside of the standard big match conventions, but I enjoyed this for what it was. I think the match itself is elevated by the post-match angle. Will Ospreay vs Mike Bailey from Impact, October 21st. Instead of your modern Ospreay epic, you get two incredible athletes just doing a bunch of cool stuff, and I think it benefits from that. I said it before, but sometimes it's okay to just sit back and enjoy the fireworks. Astronauts vs Hideki Suzuki and Hikaru Sato from Big Japan, October 22nd. I made sure to closely follow Astronauts after their match from the 12th. What starts on the mat here devolves into a very ill-willed match where both teams take pot shots at each other at every opportunity. I wish it was a little trimmed down and had a decisive winner, but Hideki Suzuki headbutting Nomura's legs mid-submission hold deserves the honorable mention alone. And last but not least, MJF vs Kenny Omega from AEW, October 28th. I wanted to use this match just as a reminder to watch a given match yourself and form your own opinion. Even if you hate the match, it wasn't worth the noise and hyperbole surrounding it, with most of it not having to do with stuff actually happening in the ring. I didn't find it to be the best or worst match to take place. I thought it was fine, which in turn made all that noise a whole lot more pointless. And that's it from me. If you got this far in the video, thank you so much for your time and for hearing what I have to say. Please do all the obligatory YouTube stuff by liking, commenting, and subscribing, as those things go a long way. You can find me on the app formerly known as Twitter at OuterStevan. I'll talk to you again next time to discuss the month of November, as well as a channel update.